Okay, so here we are inside of your Canvas course. Of course, your section number could be different. Um, but as you scroll down and you look at the project module, we're going to go down to step 7. Step 7 is about designing two histograms of two single random variables and complete two MyOpenMath problems. So let me maybe clear this up a little bit. So you're designing two histograms per random variable. So you're going to end up creating four histograms altogether. And so down here in this part 7a, this is a MyOpenMath problem that will guide you through the process of creating two histograms for your first random variable. And then this second MyOpenMath problem is creating two more histograms, so like histogram 3 and histogram 4, for your second random variable. So what I'm going to talk about in this video is all of the processes to complete this MyOpenMath problem, and then you'll repeat all of those same processes to do it again on a second random variable in this second MyOpenMath problem. All right. So when you click on this link here, let me go ahead and click on that. Then it's going to get you to this page. And when you click this button, it's going to bring up this MyOpenMath problem. And this MyOpenMath problem, it's called designing a histogram from a data set. These are some of the things that you need to have in front of you. We'll go over that right now. Some reservations, as the student is expected to complete this problem with spreadsheet software with limited guidance. So I want you to try and work this out, work this through yourself. Of course, you can ask me, you can ask others for help, but certainly for help, not to tell you what to do all the way through it. And that at the end of this MyOpenMath problem is going to create histograms for you, okay? But you cannot use these histogram graphs in your student project report. The histograms that MyOpenMath is going to make is to give you feedback as to what yours should look like, okay? So when you make your histograms in your spreadsheet software, namely Microsoft Excel, and when you see that picture, this MyOpenMath problem should give you that picture of what it should look like, okay? In Microsoft Excel, you're going to change the formatting so it looks really good, okay? But the number of classes, how the bars, the general shape of the histogram, should be the same in Microsoft Excel as what you're going to see at the end of this MyOpenMath problem. Now, this MyOpenMath problem is also separated into parts. And so there are 8 parts. And as you scroll down, you'll see, well, wait, I can only see part 1. Well, I've done this by design. So you can't move on to the next part until you've answered everything in the previous part. So when we fill in these 2 questions for part 1 and hit submit, that'll let us go on to the next part. All right. And the reason why I've done that is because everything has to be done in sequence. If you go out of sequence, you won't have the information that you need, and you won't be able to complete designing a histogram. So I very carefully orchestrated everything to be in a certain sequence so that everything that you need for the next step, you've just completed in the previous step. Okay. So that's why I've kind of designed it this way. All right. So again, for your project, let me go back here. We're on step 7, and we're going to design 2 histograms. Let me scroll down. We're going to design 2 histograms for one random variable. And of course, I'll be doing it for one of my random variables, but you can follow along with yours. All of the steps will be the same. And so how are we going to do that? So in order to design a histogram and fill in this My Open Math problem, we're going to follow two things. One, I have a PDF of this student project report guide, and I have a PDF for you to download. Okay, so either way you want to look at it, you have this. And if we scroll through or flip a number of pages, one of the pages that I've included here is this flowchart. It's coming up here. This is the flowchart for designing a histogram. And so step zero, is to, have your random variable data set ready to go. And that data set that I'm going to use is this is what you completed in a previous step. And that was exporting, sorry, the data set of one random variable into a comma separated value text file. And so here is my text file. This is the random variable of speed of roller coasters. And you can see each number here, represents the maximum speed of an individual roller coaster. And these numbers are listed vertically, with carriage returns after each line. So the MyOpenMath problem is expecting to see the data formatted this way. If you don't have this text file, you need to go to the previous step, step 6, and export your data for each random variable in this text format way. Otherwise, MyOpenMath won't accept it. Again, I've kind of arranged things in linear order for a reason. So you need to have this text file kind of open and ready to go. And instead of doing the work in your calculator, you're going to do the work in your spreadsheet. And so here is the roller coaster spreadsheet data, all of the random variables for the roller coaster data set. So my data set had a whole bunch random variables included in it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to design two histograms around this random variable of speed. And in the previous steps, I isolated the speed random variable and I sorted the data. Okay. So I've got one worksheet that I've titled RV for random variable speed so that I know that this data is all contained within the speed random variable. And again, the speed random variable was just one of these columns in my data set. Let's see here, if I scroll down, I was hoping I could find that minimum value of 4.5 just to kind of prove it to you, but can't seem to find it. Oh, here it is. So this minimum of a speed of 4.5 miles an hour was for a roller coaster, gosh, called Gurnalund, and it was on the ride called Tough Tough Tiget, whatever that is. So that roller coaster, the fastest speed it went was 4.5 miles per hour, and that was the minimum speed in the entire data set. So I've got that ready to go. Okay, so all the things that I've got. I've got this MyOpenMath problem ready to go. I've got this project report in front of me ready to go. I've got this text file here on the computer ready to go. And I've got my spreadsheet software here ready to go. Okay, so let's start with the flowchart because we'll kind of come back to this every once in a while. So step 0 is to kind of get your random variable data set ready to go. We will end up getting sample size here, and we'll get D here. Let's scroll down a couple more pages because what I've also provided for you is this histogram design worksheet. All right, so in this worksheet, we just kind of fill this out as we go. So what was the name of my random variable? It was speed. And I'm going to put the units that my speed was recorded in, and that was in miles per hour. Yours is going to be different. And I'm going to go ahead and maybe just put this in bold and make it red to show you what I just entered in here. Okay. Now speed, miles per hour. This is the label and the units for this random variable. So now I'm going to go into the MyOpenMath problem. Question 0 is where you input the student data. So here it says type in the x-axis label and the units. That's the label of your random variable and the units. So I just pasted in what I typed in here in the histogram design worksheet. I just pasted that in. All right. And I've kind of given you example here. So if the random variable I was looking at was vertical height, I'd type in vertical height and I'd put the units in parentheses just like that. So this is an example, but this is what I'm doing here. All right. Now, the next question we need for part 1 is to input our data. So from your text file of one random variable, copy and paste the data into the answer box below. So let's do that. So I'm going to bring up my text file. And, what I kind of like about this WordPad, this basic text editor here in Windows, is that it has these buttons that are really easy to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to select all of the numbers, and now I'm going to copy them. And I'm going to go into MyOpenMath, and you see this rectangular box here. If I click inside of it, I can right click and I can choose paste, or I can hit Control V. But I'm just doing this so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to hit paste. And now it's pasted in all of that data. And you'll notice that now along the right-hand side, it's created a slider or a slider control that allows me to slide up and down to show all of the data that was pasted in there. Okay, so you don't have to worry that it looks like this box is only like 12 rows high, and think, oh, I should only put in 12 rows of data. No, you have to paste in all of your data. It can handle it. It can handle up to 1,000 rows of data. Okay, so you don't have to worry about it. Make sure you paste in all of your data. Let me say that one more time. Make sure you paste in all of your data. All right, otherwise your histograms will not work. It will not work out. All right. So as far as this part is concerned, part 1, we've answered question 0 and we've answered question 1. So now we can hit submit. And if MyOpenMath likes what you've put in there, then it'll tell us, yep, I liked that. I liked your answer to question 0. You may proceed. I like your answer to question 1. You may proceed. And notice, remember last time it cut us off here. Now, because we've answered those 2 questions, it's letting us on to part 2. And so let me show you what part 2 shows. So part 2 shows all of the data that you pasted in, and it's arranged to be 10 columns wide. So if you wanted to, you could count how many datums you have, and you could count by tens, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and so on, 240, 241. But to also keep you from counting, I also programmed this MyOpenMath problem to kind of tell you how many datums you have in this random variable. So for me, I've got 241. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my worksheet, and here under sample size, I'm going to put in 241. All right. Um, and in case we need this later, we want to put in lowercase d, which is the highest decimal place of accuracy in our random variable. So let's go back to the MyOpenMath problem and just kind of look at all of these datums. And what's the maximum number of decimal places I see in any datum present? Well, I see some datums that have 0 decimal places. And certainly I see a lot of them with 1 decimal place. And I can't find any that have more than 1 decimal place. So the maximum decimal places of accuracy I have in my data set is going to be 1. So I'm just going to record a 1 right here. Now, of course, I'm typing this in to this Word document because I have access to the Word document of it. But I'm typing it in because this is more convenient for me in creating this video. But you have like a paper copy of this, or you have a sheet of paper in front of you where you can write these things down. So you should be writing these things down for yourself as well. Okay. Now this tutorial is based off of Microsoft Excel. So I did a previous video where I did Google Sheets, but we're doing Microsoft Excel. So I'm just going to kind of highlight this. And since we're doing Microsoft Excel, we have to keep in mind that the first class interval is going to include the lower bound, and it's going to include the upper bound in the first class. All right, so we have to bear that in mind. And then every class after it, the lower bound is not going to be included, and the upper bound will be included. And so we just have to kind of bear that in mind. That differs from Google Sheets here. All right, so let's go back to the MyOpenMath problem. And, in your project report, whenever you put a table or a figure, you need to put a caption down below. So I'm just giving you an example of what a caption for a data table should be, what it should kind of look like. Again, I've restated the sample size again, in case you missed it at the top. And now we need to decide where our starting point needs to be. So you can see it's got method A, C, and D. That's the same as step 1 in designing a histogram, choosing a starting point. We have to choose between method A, method C, and method D. Now, since you're using Microsoft Excel, there's no wrong answer here. You can do A, C, or D. If you're using Google Sheets, you would want to pay particular attention to using method A. Okay, but you're not. So we just need to worry about Microsoft Excel. So based off of my data set, I need to choose a starting point. Do I want my starting point to be equal to the minimum value in my data set? Do I want my starting point to just be 0? Or do I want my starting point to be some number less than the minimum? So I'm going to go back to the MyOpenMath problem, and I'm going to look at my data and make that determination. So you'll notice that the starting point is either going to be 0 or equal to the minimum or less than the minimum. So this data set will be sorted for you. So the first datum is the minimum value. So I'm looking at my minimum value of 4.5. Now, because I'm using Microsoft Excel, I could use 4.5 as my minimum value. So if I were going to use 4.5 as my starting point, I would be using method A. If I didn't want to use 4.5, maybe instead of using 4.5, maybe I wanted to just use 4. Okay, 4 is less than 4.5. It's less than my minimum. So I would be using method D. My starting point of 4 is less than my minimum of 4.5. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a conscious choice here to use 0. And the reason why I'm going to use 0 is because 0 is a nice place to start if you can start there. And 4.5 is so close to 0 anyway. Okay. So because 4.5 is so close to 0, I'm going to use 0. And when it comes to speed, a speed of 0 makes sense. We know intuitively that a speed of 0 means you're standing still. So when people are looking at my histogram, I want to have a speed of 0, which represents the roller coaster isn't moving. Okay, it's 0. So for me, I'm going to use method C, which is my starting point is going to be equal to 0. So here, question 2 says, which method do you want to use? A, C, or D? Well, I'm going to use method C, which is a starting point of 0. So I'm going to put method C right here. Then the next part of question 2 asks me, well, which device or software method do you want to use? Well, I'm using Microsoft Excel. So I'm going to enter a Z for Microsoft Excel. And it says, given your method chosen in question 2, the starting point of your first class is, so what was my starting point? My starting point is going to be 0.0. Now, the reason why I put an extra 0.0 here is because that's what this problem is asking for. Okay, it's asking for that extra decimal point of accuracy. And before I hit submit, let me go back to this worksheet and make sure I've got everything here. Okay, so I'm using method C, so I'm just going to go ahead and bold and, well, let's see, I'm not going to bold it. I'm just going to highlight it red. You can circle it or write it down. The minimum datum in my data set is 4.5. And let me bold and make that red. My starting point, I decided is going to be 0. Oh, my maximum datum, I'm going to need that. So my maximum datum, let me go back to the MyOpenMath problem. And again, this is sorted from smallest to largest. So my maximum datum for me is 149.1. So let me go back to this and do 149, oops, 0.1. Okay, so I think now what we can do is let's go back to the MyOpenMath problem. We've answered all of the questions, question 2 and question 3, in this second part, and I'll hit submit. Now, if it likes everything that we've done, it likes it, it likes it, it likes it, it lets us on to part 3. Now, so far, we've just been kind of going based off of the worksheet and this MyOpenMath problem. But we're going to need our spreadsheet software to kick in now. Okay, I was going to say soon, but we got to flip over and let's move forward with our spreadsheet. So here we are with the spreadsheet. You might have some more tabs in here. Okay, I just removed all of my tabs so that it would be less confusing for you. So this is the random variable I'm making 2 histograms on. So the first thing I want to do is I want to duplicate this. This will make it so that if I make a mistake, I haven't corrupted my original random variable worksheet. So what I can do is I can right click on this tab and I can put move or copy. And what I want to do is I want to create a copy. So make sure you check this checkbox and then click click Move to End. So this will put it at the very end. And if I click OK, it says random variable speed parentheses 2. So it just gives it a name different from this one. And you can see as I click between these two, they're identical, right? If I click to this one, that's different. But these two are identical. All right, but what I want to do is I want to rename this one. So I'm going to rename this by right-clicking on it, and I can choose Rename. And let me do, yeah, okay. And so what I want to rename this to is going to be random variable speed. And I'm going to call this design histograms in MyOpenMath. Okay. Some kind of description that kind of tells me why I created this worksheet and what this worksheet does for me. Okay. All right. So now I've got this copy. Now I want to kind of catch up what we've done so far and teach you some things about Microsoft Excel at the same time. So let's go over here to the top of column C. Okay, so this is column C. That's what this label means. And I'm in row 1, which is the very first row. I'm just going to type in random variable name colon. All right, so we can just kind of click in any cell and we can type in whatever we want. And over here in the next cell, in column D, row 1, this is cell D1, I'm going to type in that our random variable was speed. And then down here below in cell C2, I'm going to put random variable units, colon, and for me, that was in miles per hour. All right. Now, what's kind of cool is, here I wrote down the minimum and the maximum. And to get it, I had you flip over to the MyOpenMath problem, and the MyOpenMath problem very conveniently sorts your data so you can see the minimum and maximum. All right, but in the real world, you're not going to have a MyOpenMath problem to glean that from, okay? And you want to save yourself from looking through a list of data, trying to find the smallest and the largest. So how can you make the spreadsheet software just give it to you? Well, let me show you. So I'm going to type minimum equals, and I'm going to type in maximum equals. And I'm using arrow keys to kind of navigate around. All right. So notice that whenever I type in text and I hit enter, nothing happens. The text just stays there. But if I start typing, if the first character that I type is an equal sign, now that tells the spreadsheet software to pay attention. I'm about to put in a calculation or use a special function in the software. Okay. And let me show you the difference. For example, if I was to type in just 1 plus 1 and hit enter, it does nothing. It just takes that as text. Now we know mathematically 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. So watch what happens now if I delete this and I put equals 1 plus 1. So I typed in the same thing, except I started it with an equal sign. Remember, the equal sign tells Microsoft Excel, I'm putting in a formula. I'm putting in a calculation I want you to do. So when I hit enter, it now does the calculation of 1 plus 1 equals 2. It treats 1 plus 1 now as an equation, as an expression, a mathematical expression to calculate, just because I started it with an equal sign, right? Remember, it doesn't do it if I just type it without an equal sign. Okay. And another thing to kind of show you how spreadsheet software is organized is you can see that when I click in a cell up here, this is called the formula bar. And so the formula bar is showing me the formula that exists inside this cell. So without clicking in this cell, it looks like all I did was just type in the number 2, right? So if I click here, I typed in a 2 and this is showing me all there is behind it is a 2. But if I click in the next cell up above, this 2 actually comes from this formula, which is equals 1 plus 1. So this formula bar gives you the formula that's underneath this result in this cell. Okay. There is a way, let me see if I can find it really quick. Let's see here. What I'm looking for, formulas. Okay. So and I'll show this later too, but if you want to see all the formulas in your sheet, you can go to the formulas menu. And over here under formula auditing, there's an option called show formulas. If I click that, you'll see it kind of changed the formatting a little bit. And instead of putting the 2, it's now showing me the formula. And if I click this off, it'll just put everything back the way it was. Okay. So what we're trying to get is we're trying to get the minimum. All right. And I took a moment to kind of teach you how important an equal sign is. Okay. So let me delete these two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an equal sign, not because I want to do a calculation, but because I want to use a function in the spreadsheet software. And the function I want to use is I'm going to start typing the word minimum. I'm going to just type in MIN. Now, because I hit equal sign first and I started typing MIN, Microsoft Excel started giving me functions that it has, native functions that it has, that start or that include the letters MIN in it. So some of these other ones, like nominal and dmin, I have no idea what those are. We don't need those. But what we need is this first one. And this first one called MIN, it says right next to it, returns the smallest number in a set of values. Okay. So now if I click that or double click it, now this is showing me, okay, we're going to use the minimum function. And what the minimum function needs is it needs inputs. And the inputs are included between this left parentheses and this right parentheses. And when it needs more than one input, those inputs are separated by commas. Okay. So you can see here, it says minimum left parentheses. So now what it's wanting as an input is it wants all of the numbers. It wants our data set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to left click on cell A1 because this is the first cell with the first datum in my random variable data set. And notice when I clicked here, it's now highlighted with this kind of dashed line and it's in blue. And now you can see over here in our function, it says A1 and it's also in blue. It's also in our formula bar. So because I clicked here in A1, it's printed A1 here in our function. Now what I want to do is I want to scroll down and I want to scroll down to the last datum in this column. And so the last datum for me is down here at row 241. Now here, this is important. If I hold down the shift button, press and hold, keep the shift button held down, and also hit the left mouse button, just tap it once, it will select every cell from the first to the last and everything in between. And now I can let go of this shift key. So notice all of these datums are now selected. And now that all of these datums are selected, how it shows that in our function is it says A1, which was the first. It has A241, which was at the last. And then to show we want all the values in between, it puts a colon. So you can see up here, A1 colon A241. That means everything in between the first and the last. And because this is a function with a left parentheses, we need to close this off with a right parentheses. Okay. And now that we've finished using this function and we've put in the input it requires, we can hit enter or we can hit this little green check mark. And now the minimum is 4.5. So it automatically searched through all of those numbers and gave us the minimum. So now we can do the same thing with maximum. So hit equals, start typing in the word of what it is you want to try to do. And you can see there are some functions here. You can explore these yourself, but we want to use this first one, max, which returns the largest value in a set of values. Now, I did this again by clicking here, holding down the shift key, going to the last one, and hitting the last one. But I can also just type it in. So remember, the first datum was A1. And notice I just typed in A1 and it selected that cell. Now I can put in a colon to show I want everything in between A1, and now I can type in A241. And notice how the number of how the selection stretched, right? As I typed it in, A241. And then I can put right parentheses and hit enter or hit this green check mark. And there we go. There's my maximum. So, you won't have the benefit of using, my open math, in your job or in future classes. Okay. You'll have to use this spreadsheet software, but this is how you can use it to get the minimum or maximum. And there's a ton of functions you can use. I'm just showing you how to get started using functions as it pertains to this class. And remember, I showed you earlier, if you want to see the formulas underneath, you can click on each cell and then you can look in the formula bar. So there's the minimum function. There's the maximum function. And then here under the formulas menu, we can put show formulas. And there's those two. All right, let me turn that off. Go back to home. And let's do one more thing. Let's put in our starting point, which was 0. I'm going to go ahead and type that in. And let me go back to my open math. All right, so we're in part 3. So I actually did 2 parts in one video. I meant to only do one, but that's okay. So let me stop this video here. And we'll move on to part 3 in my open math, which will be step 2 in designing a histogram. All right, let me know if you have any questions.